I went through Israeli media and Israeli channels and ended up finding this clip here from a very popular Israeli comedy show mocking John F. Kennedy, Israel's first prime minister, mocking John F. Kennedy while not telling him about Israel's nuclear weapons development. So it really does shed light on how Israelis view Americans and how Israelis view American presidents. This was released back in 2022. It comes from a famous, a very popular Israeli comedy show. This is just a 2-minute clip from that comedy show, 2-minute little sketch here. And basically what you see is John F. Kennedy asking Israel's founder, Israel's first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, do you have nuclear weapons? And the whole thing is mocking him. So I'm going to go ahead and play a clip of it. For copyright reasons, I have to be careful, so I have to have it sped up a little bit and everything. But take a listen to this. This is shocking. Take a listen.
And then, when you mix it with jam,
Yes.
it becomes good.
Interesting.
It's delicious. Yeah.
Okay, Prime Minister, what can you tell me about the nuclear reactor in Dimona?
You know,
I don't. Is it for civil purposes, other purposes?
what's the difference?
There is a difference.
Tomato, potato.
Well, can you tell me something about the Dimona project?
Yes, of course. Well, the situation in Dimona is very similar to Piñata. No further question, Your Honor?
So I'm just going to stop right there. I promise I'll play a little bit more, but I mean, basically, this is the whole depiction, is that you end up seeing John F. Kennedy getting mocked and getting getting brushed aside by David Ben-Gurion, both of them obviously being character depictions of them, being reenacted by them, and he's basically refusing to answer John F. Kennedy about Israel's nuclear weapons. Now, this is why I find this show so shocking. This was back in 2022. Okay, so I'd say, a lot of Americans really woke up after October 7th. So back in 2022, Israeli comedy show was putting this out to the public, which means that in order for them to think that it's going to do a good hit with the public, they would have to assume to some degree that the public has relative knowledge about John F. Kennedy's relationship with Israel. They wouldn't have put this out about David Ben-Gurion as a comedy scene if they thought it wouldn't click, which means that they assumed that most Israelis must have known that John F. Kennedy and David Ben-Gurion had a very odd relationship, and David Ben-Gurion was basically lying to him. Otherwise, they wouldn't make a show about it, making fun of it. So it really, now look at us here in the United States. Imagine, I've never heard about this show, by the way. It took me 3.5 hours. I did some deep research to try to find this show, to try to find this clip here. 3.5 hours, and I had to download a VPN in order to actually download this. That's how crazy I went to find this. But it goes to show what the Israelis' view of Americans. They literally laugh at it. Now I'm going to show you the rest, another little part here. Again, I have to be careful because of copyright reasons. I really don't want this video to get taken down. But I'm gonna show you here. Basically, for another minute is John F. Kennedy being made fun of, and he's eating and he's ignoring John F. Kennedy. He's sipping on his tea, refuses to answer John F. Kennedy. It's basically a lot of the same stuff.
Probably not.
Probably.
Possibly yes.
Are you?
Probably not.
Sir, are you manufacturing a nuclear bomb?
Probably not.
Probably.
Possibly yes.
Are you?
Plummy plop. Scabra.
Well, are you?
Scabra beep.
What?
Scabra toodly papa toodly papa. Scabra Ben-Gurion.
So I mean, that's the sketch. That's basically really it. They're laughing at him they're basically just mocking the whole thing, and it's a sketch of John F. Kennedy being basically played for stupid by David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, and they make a 2.5 minute segment out of their 30-minute comedy show, and this is the scene. The scene is John F. Kennedy going to meet with Israel's prime minister, and Israel's first prime minister refusing to answer John F. Kennedy when he's asking him about nuclear weapons. This is our greatest ally, guys. This is our greatest ally. I'm gonna give myself pat on the back for finding this. I went through the thick of it to find this clip here, but I was looking through and then I was realizing, and this is just one clip. They have basically every Israeli prime minister since Israel's founding from 1949. They basically have clips mocking U.S. presidents and their relationship with every prime minister of Israel since 1948-49. So if there's a president between 1949 to now, there's a segment from comedy shows in Israel of them mocking the relationship of their Israeli prime ministers with our presidents. And here's the thing, okay? Countries, media, they mock, they make fun of, they joke about it. That happens everywhere. But what's interesting is the way that they go about mocking and the things that they know that we don't know. Now we know about Israel's relationship and the nuclear weapons. We have to be honest about the fact this wasn't viral until really after October 7th. This wasn't at a mainstream collective knowledge about Israel's relationship with JFK and the nuclear weapons for the mainstream average person until after October 7th. And even till then, there's still a lot of people that have no idea of this. For them to post this back in 2022 means that this is such common knowledge in Israel that they make fun of it and that they actually view it as a sort of they view it as something that they're proud of. They're proud that they had the prime minister that lied to John F. Kennedy to develop the nuke. They're proud of it because they're joking about it. They think it's funny. So they think it's funny and they're proud that happened. Now, they weren't so proud when John F. Kennedy put his foot down at the time. They really weren't proud then because I also went through a lot of Israeli documentation recently. I spent like 6 hours today really going on a deep dive. And the Israelis were so fearful of John F. Kennedy that Levi Eshkol, the second prime minister of Israel, this one right here, David Ben-Gurion, he ended up resigning because John F. Kennedy stressed him out so much. John F. Kennedy kept putting pressure on him. You better tell me what's going on. Are you developing the nuke? What's going on? David Ben-Gurion doing exactly what he was doing in this show, basically just ignoring it, trying to beat around the bush. And it got on David Ben-Gurion so much he resigned. Levi Eshkol comes on, and John F. Kennedy immediately does the same thing. Are you developing nuclear weapons? I want to know what is the status of your nuclear weapons development. Guess what? The Israeli airborne commander, an Israeli airborne commander at a time, actually held a meeting in Israel with the Prime Minister of Israel, Levi Eshkol, to seriously consider the chances of John F. Kennedy deploying the U.S. airborne troops to Dimona to capture the radioactive material. I'm not kidding. Now, obviously, this didn't happen. John F. Kennedy passed, but Israelis were so fearful of the idea of John F. Kennedy finding out that they were developing nuclear weapons, they actually did a risk assessment on how likely it would be for John F. Kennedy to deploy the U.S. airborne to Dimona. So that goes to show and guess what? You wouldn't have known about this in American news and news channels, or not even American documentation that was released through the JFK Act. I found this out because I ended up going through and I found interviews of people interviewing the commander himself of the U.S. airborne of Israel's Air Force at the time, stating, yes, we were doing risk assessments. We were genuinely concerned of the chances of John F. Kennedy deploying the U.S. airborne to capture our radioactive material, which is really our radioactive material because they stole it from us in Pennsylvania in the Apollo affair. And the whole thing, they stole it. They ended up developing the nuke. John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and immediately they do a test. They know they have the nuke, they have the bomb, it's good, let's start the 1967 war right away. Now that we have the bomb, let's start the 1967 war. We got the 1967 war. We know we can do it because now we have a nuke. So no matter how bad it goes, we know we can nuke our enemies. So now we feel really courageous. Let's go to war with all of our Arab enemies, and let's take the West Bank, and let's go ahead and take Gaza. Let's go ahead and occupy Gaza and take the West Bank and take the Golan Heights. And then we're going to go ahead and shoot down the USS Liberty. It all happened. It's all connected. It's all connected. It's all connected to Israel's nuclear weapon development. They wouldn't have started the 1967 war had they not felt protected by having a nuke. And they wouldn't have been able to develop a nuke if John F. Kennedy was never assassinated. That's also not coming from me, not just coming from me. This is also coming from Israeli media. Here, I think, let me see. I actually have an article pulled up, and it directly states, I mean, this is the thing, guys. Israeli media, in some aspects, is actually more honest than American media, because with Israeli media, what you'll notice is that they're not concerned about the idea of coming off anti-Semitic. That's how I want to put it. Because here in the United States, if you criticize Israel, then there's this fear that you might be talking about a religious group, which we're not. We're talking about a country. Well, in Israel, they are that religious group, so they have no fear talking about stuff like that because they are Jewish. So anybody that's reading what they say knows that they're not being anti-Semitic. So the Israelis tend to be a lot more honest sometimes about truly just about the relationship with John F. Kennedy, the facts, everything else. And I mean, Israeli archives at the time, they were just blatantly stating, had it not been for John F. Kennedy's assassination, then we would have Israel's nuclear program could have ended. If John F. Kennedy was not assassinated, Israel's nuclear weapons program would likely have ended. And this is coming from, where is it? Israel. It's either from Haaretz or the Times of Israel. It's from Haaretz. And guess what? It's not just the Haaretz that we see, the American Haaretz. You guys might know the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. They also have a Hebrew version, and sometimes they put out Hebrew articles that they don't put out to the rest of us. And this was Haaretz's Hebrew article from about like a decade now. And they're also stating, yeah, we were so scared. So they knew. The Israelis knew. Even till today, up until even prior to October 7th, they knew that John F. Kennedy had a tense relationship, because I also went through Israeli news articles at the time. So if you go on, you can go on to, if you search up Israeli archives, Israeli state archives, or Israeli newspaper archives, you can pull up Haaretz articles, you can pull up Palestine Post articles, Jerusalem Posts. Before Jerusalem Post, they took over the media outlet. It used to be called the Palestine Post. You can go through and you can see, and you can go through the Jerusalem Post, you can go through the Times of Israel, and you can see articles from back then, and you could see how they interacted. And even though they never actually owned up to the fact that John F. Kennedy was fighting with David Ben-Gurion and Levi Eshkol about nuclear weapons, they were reporting on the fact that there was a very top secret issue that they were fighting about. And they didn't want the press to know what that top secret issue was. They didn't want the press to know what that top secret issue was so much that Levi Eshkol, the second prime minister of Israel, actually hosted a meeting at his residence in Tel Aviv, and he brought over the media, and they held a meeting specifically with the media at the time and told them, don't report on anything related to Dimona, don't report on anything related to nuclear weapons, don't report on anything related to our back and forth with John F. Kennedy. They basically put a gag order in the media at the time. And this came from two articles. I really need to start having my sources like pulled up when I state this stuff so I could show you right away. But they had two articles showing, okay, they told the media, we're not gonna tell anybody about these nukes, we're not gonna do any of this. Okay, actually, I think I found one of them. And that's basically how the media was able to get away with it. Now, this was way back at the time in the 60s. Now, fast forward to the 90s, to the early 2000s, and then things started coming out about Israel's nuclear weapons development. I think in 2014 or 2015 is when a lot of the documents came out from George Washington University. They put out those documents regarding John F. Kennedy's letters back and forth with Israel's first prime minister. I mean, guys, it's shocking when you recognize just, how much information they have that we don't have on our own president. It's our president. It's our president. It's our president that was assassinated. And we can't, and we don't have any of that information that they have. Because why don't we have it? Well, because our media lies to us more. I mean, their media lies to them just as much. They lie in different ways. Our media lies to us and doesn't want us to know about this dark, bad relationship with Israel that we have. So, I mean, I'm doing a whole nother episode right after this one on John F. Kennedy and David Ben-Gurion. I have like 20 tabs open that I will go through with you guys in this next episode. I really just wanted to focus on sharing that clip for this episode. So if you found this video interesting, I'd really appreciate it if you go ahead and click the subscribe button. And let me play it like one more time just so you can see like the middle part of it, so you could just see how much they really just mocked us. So let me play this last part. I don't think I showed you.
Me try to clarify. My country as you try to say. And all the Arabs in the Middle East are trying to copy each other.
And here's the thing. So he's about to say Holocaust, and I'll mention to you why he says Holocaust. Just so it's here. Take a quick listen.
As you probably know, because of the Holocaust.
Oh, he said, as you probably know, because of the Holocaust. Now, that might not seem like anything significant. It might just be funny because he's just trying to, push him along and not have him ask the questions about the nukes. But David Ben-Gurion, despite them trying to make him sound so funny and like this really like funny character, he was actually a stressed out little, just a stressed out little man, really stressed out, weak man. John F. Kennedy really put him in his place. And David Ben-Gurion sent John F. Kennedy a 10-page document, two letters at different periods, 10 pages. On the other one, I think was like 7 or 8 pages, crying. The most emotional letter. David Ben-Gurion's aide at the time, when David Ben-Gurion wrote this letter, he sent him a really emotional letter, and he was touching on the Holocaust. That's why in this skit that he joked about, and the Holocaust, because he puts together a 10-page letter to John F. Kennedy, and in the letter, he's basically telling John F. Kennedy, like, you don't understand, we're surrounded by enemies. He was really worried about Egypt. He's like, Jamal Abdel Nasser is developing, has a lot of weapons. He's getting it from the Soviets, and they're like Hitler, and the Arabs are like Hitlers, and they want to do a second Holocaust, and it's because of the Holocaust, and it's because of the Holocaust. And he mentioned the Holocaust a few times. He's like, they want to get rid of us. They want to annihilate us. John F. Kennedy, please, please. Literally begging. I'm not even over-exaggerating. David Ben-Gurion's aide was so shocked when he was reviewing the letter. He was like, David Ben-Gurion, do not send this to John F. Kennedy. And David Ben-Gurion sent the letter anyways. I've memorized so much of this because I read through these so often. But this was the relationship. It was horrible. It was horrible. And of course, then he resigned, and Levi Eshkol took his place. And John F. Kennedy, he said, congratulations on becoming the new prime minister. Now show me the nuclear site, or otherwise we're going to cut off the relationship. He didn't even wait a second. Now, if you think that's bad, okay, let me get to the next video because there's a lot of really other good stuff I want to share, but I want to save it for the next video, the next live stream I'm about to do. So I'll go ahead and do that right now. I'm gonna end this one right now though, but if you guys can, please, I'd really appreciate the support. Just give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and if you haven't yet, if you want to do those hype point things, I think it shares this video with more people if you click the hype button. So if you can click the hype button, also join as a member if you haven't yet. And if you click the description, I also have like tips where you can kind of tip me if you found this video helpful and you want me to do more content like this. Helps me do this as a full-time job for you guys. So anyways, I'll see you guys here in like 5 minutes in the next video. Take care and have a great day.